The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Taking a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance.
Good morning, everyone. This is Blanca, the host of the Laws of Empowering Entrepreneurs. And I'm talking about entrepreneurs that I meet through my journey of life, incredible people that inspire me and I know are going to inspire you. And it's their experiences, their stories that we're going to learn to inspire, ignite, and motivate all of us to learn, to grow, and to keep on going. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Renee Taylor. She calls herself an authorpreneur. She's a leader in women's empowerment, and she's just, what can I say, simply amazing. Welcome to the show, Renee. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am fired up, and we have so much to talk about, but let's tell everybody a little bit more about your background. So when did you write your first book, Letters to My Father?
Well, that was really at the height of the pandemic. It was actually published out to the world on paperback in 2011. It was November 2020. And it wasn't even something I planned to do. I was supposed to be writing a book of poetry. But yeah, isn't that something? But somehow God knew exactly what the world was going to need, right? Maybe not another poem, but a book about grief. So I honored my father 10 years after his passing with that book.
And I'm sure you entitled the book 7 Steps to Healing from the Loss of a Parent. So 10 years later, that's a pretty long time after his passing. What ignited you to start that particular journey?
Yes. So I knew prior to the pandemic, I was, an artist. I was some people say starving artist. I would say I was a hustling artist, right? I was out here chasing the opportunities. I was doing everything imaginable from Atlantic City to Brooklyn to New Jersey, where I was in North New Jersey. And I said, God, I'm looking for something that's going to fulfill me. And I really need to know, what is my purpose? What am I doing? Because I'm not fulfilled in this place. And so when I started seeking him, more specifically, and being intentional about bringing people into my life that are going to bring value and not just space, I automatically found myself with a coach, a book coach of mine that I'd already done a lot of work with prior to. She was doing a book camp. She sponsored me for the book camp. It was somewhat like an accelerated program for the weekend of my birthday. I said, well, yes. So for my birthday, I always have these really audacious, overzealous goals. So I said, I want to publish a book this weekend for my birthday. I got sponsored to be a part of this program. And she says, well, I don't do poetry. I don't do biographies. I don't do memoirs. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, you know what? When my father passed in June of 2011, I started journals. I started in an old spiral notebook that I still have to this day that I called Letters to My Father. And I used to write to him. I used to draw pictures, write poems. I used to talk about the things that we talked about, things that, I imagined my life if he was still here. And I took those journals and a lot of the intimate things that I talked about in that journal, and I transformed it into a guide for other people. And somehow all the pieces just came together. And I actually got an award for actually finishing my manuscript within 2 days, 80% of my manuscript in 2 days. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it was a great program.
Amazing. And was that experience, did it help heal the loss of your father by writing that book?
Well, honestly, I actually had already been in the healing process. And I think that's why I was able to write it, because I'm telling you, if anybody knows if they've had any loss, not even just a parent, you know that you're not even in a space to talk about it, right? So you had to, my first step in my first chapter in that book is acknowledgement. So I was long past the grieving process. I will have to say, by writing the book, I then kind of resurface that grief, right? I then had to resurface a lot of the hurt feelings. So I go back to that place to really kind of illustrate that for the readers of, okay, this is where I was. This is how I got through it in those stages, because everybody's on different ends of the spectrum when it comes to grief. So thankfully, I was already in that healing process, and I had experienced a lot of heights in my at the height of the pandemic.
Well, now you also have another book out called Breakthrough, featuring
Yes.
Renee Taylor, and that is a book you co-wrote with other authors, designed also to ignite other entrepreneurs. So give us a little glimpse into what was the breakthrough you talk about in that book.
Yes. So actually, Blanca, that was my first installment. Breakthrough was released in 2019. And so or was it 2018? I believe it was 2018 or 19. And that was the start of my story, right? The start of my step into an entrepreneurship and authorship, if you will. And I gave a glimpse into my life, you know, my background, my family history, toxic relationships, things that I felt really built me into the woman that I was. And all of those things happened a month prior to my 30th birthday. I lost my father in June, as I mentioned, right? I was signed to an independent label as an artist. I was nearly done with my album, right? I was at the height of that, and I was on top of the world, right? I felt like I was in the best shape of my life. I looked great. And what do you know? The guy that I was with for nearly 10 years, we ended that relationship, right? So all these endings, and then I lost my pastor and a mentor of mine, and they happened consecutively. So when all of that happened, I put all that in the book where I had to delve into my history, my family history, my makeup, you know, what happened, why my grandmother was raising us, right? So my mother and my father have always been around, right? They've always been physically present, but my grandmother had custody of us. So I wanted to tap into that, because I don't know if anyone else that's listening understands that when you lose somebody, you go in to this internal place and have these internal conversations of like, who am I? You know, what do I want? You know, what is life all about, right? You change your perception of everything around you. And when I started to ask those hard questions, that propelled me into my purpose. So that was the start. I figured, okay, I'll put my foot in the door with this book, along Johnny Wimbrey and Les Brown and other authors. And that would be the start of my breakthrough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that your breakthrough came after consecutive breakdowns. It's almost like nothing was holding you back. And, you know, sometimes when somebody goes through breakdown after breakdown after breakdown, I mean, you had personal, your relationship, your father, everything sort of. And what do? You go out there and you punch through it. I guess the question we all want to know is, what was the fuel that ignited that fire?
Yes. Well, thank you for asking that. And thank you for saying breakdown, because I always say that it's almost a tagline of mine that sometimes you have to have a breakdown before you can have a breakthrough. So
Yes,
I
I
tell
see
you,
that on your social media.
we're so synced, I tell you. So you're always reading my mind. But thank you for asking that question about what fueled it. Yes. So for me, I felt like I've always been introspective. I've always been someone that was over ambitious, right? I always wanted more out of life. I was a dreamer. So when these things happened to me and I asked those hard questions, I started getting into my journal. I started writing and kind of writing my story, hence author, right? And kind of writing the vision. Because when I found out the truth about my family history and the things that happened, the breakdown of family, the breakdown with my father, he was only 57, you know, all of those things as to why we ended up at my grandmother's house. That's when I knew that I wanted to create the life that I wanted. Right. I knew that, okay, they maybe couldn't do the things that I could do. Right. My father was, carpenter, phenomenal man. They called him the professor. He was a lover, not a fighter. He always used to say that, you know, he loved progressive jazz. He was a poet. My mother is phenomenal. She's a singer as well. So, but I realized they didn't have the resources. They didn't have the education. Right. Maybe they didn't even have the ambition. So I felt it important and significant for me to live the life that they couldn't. And so I felt like it was my responsibility. I'm still here. God still has gave me breath in my body. So I felt like I had a responsibility to do something. And I had nowhere to go but up at that point. I was at the lowest of low. I actually got out of my signed contract. Thankfully, I knew the person that I was, doing business with. We had like a nearly 20-year relationship in business. So he allowed me to get out of my contract without, being breached the contract, right? And I didn't even perform for nearly a year and a half after that. I really had to delve into who I was. And so I just really think it was about just my zest for life, the dreamer in me that was like, no, there's more that I'm supposed to be doing here. And I believe that's how myself and my brother, we've lived our lives that way.
That is so powerful. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to celebrate the new Laws of Life Roku channel, which now has over 649 shows on it. And when we come back, we're going to hear Vernae's #1 law of being an empowering entrepreneur. We'll be right back. All right. So Vernae,
I love that.
You like my dance moves? I've got some.
I love the dance moves. A good dance, it makes everything better.
I know, right? So, what is your #1 law of being empowering?
Ooh, being empowering. Oh my goodness, that's a hard one. That's a loaded question. I mean, you can answer that question in so many different ways. I would say the #1 law that I've had throughout my life is really just integrity. Kind of knowing yourself, right? I always say, to thine own self be true. And I will say it is a challenge. It is a challenge to get up every day and say, okay, I'm going to live authentically who I am. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to walk in my power. I'm going to embrace what's special and unique about me. And I promise you, it took work for me to do that. But I think it's always important to stay true to yourself, stay true to your values, your core values. And I definitely attribute, my core and that foundation to my grandmother and the way that she raised us, so that was always a good thing.
That's amazing. Well, you have a light inside of you, which is really
Thanks.
magical. And I noticed it as soon as we met at the summit. If you guys come to the summit, that's where a lot of magic happens and people have a lot of opportunities to be interviewed by the Laws of Life Network. So you've written 2 books at this point.
Yes.
Is there a plan to write more books? Is that who is Vernae Taylor? Because you're an author, you're an artist, you're a speaker, but what is your #1 vision for Vernae?
My #1 vision is to find what my purpose is, right? Why did God design me? Why am I here? What is my divine assignment? It's actually a part of my affirmation that I start saying. I am chosen, I'm capable, and I'm on a divine assignment. So what is my assignment? And then what I want to do and who I am is I am always constantly, relentlessly pursuing that assignment. If I continue to do that, then I feel like I lived my life. Job well done. I did what it is that I was designed to do. And it's a struggle when you're an artist, you're always in your head, your creative mind, your creative thinker, you always want the unimaginable, you always want to do the impossible. But I think if we are relentlessly pursuing that which we were designed to do and why we're here, then I think that we can be more fulfilled. We can empower others. And that's exactly what I've been able to do. Just kind of walking in my own power, giving people the tools or the things that I've done that kind of helped me rebuild, because I had to rebuild myself from the bottom with all those losses, with that grief, with, the endings of so many significant things in my life. I had a big question mark. Who are you, Renee? I had to go and discover myself and rediscover myself. So that's what we're constantly doing, rediscovering ourselves and redefining.
Do you think we ever come up with a final mission of what our divine assignment is, as you put it? Or do you think it's just a constant evolving sculpture that never truly hardens?
Well, I do believe that we do discover it. And then in the midst of that journey, yes, we are ever evolving, right? So we want to add to it. We want to multiply. We want to magnify it, right? We want to make sure that it continues to expand so that we can reach more people. I know some people say, and I think it was Maya Angelou that said, a lot of people, they may forget what you said to them, but they're not going to forget how you made them feel. So in that journey and that path that we're on, it's really important that you try to impact people positively. So with that evolution, you're helping people, you're paying it forward, you're turning around and bringing people along. I think that's important as well. And I think that that's just the laws of life, no pun intended. And it is something I think that really can kind of heal the world if we really kind of live our lives that way, that we want to pay it forward and have a positive impact on someone else. Because really, a lot of times people, they don't know that they can get through something, and sometimes until they can hear the experience of someone else. So I realize as a storyteller and as an author, my story is not for me. It's essentially for someone else. I went through that grief. I went through the loss of my father so that I could then help other people that didn't even know they were grieving, didn't even know how to grieve, right? They didn't give themselves permission to do so. I'm going through this breakdown and it's breaking through process so that I can help others through. So I know that you asked another question that I do want to answer. I forgot that you asked it, and I do apologize that I neglected to answer. Yes, there is something else coming. So I'm looking.
What is it? What is it?
So I'm looking to relaunch Breakthrough, as you can see behind me. Breakthrough, the book. I'm looking to relaunch my portion of that, right? And I'm going to couple that with I Am Breaking Through Journal. So as I mentioned, when I was trying to rebuild myself, affirmations and reflections were really, really important to the making of me, or the remaking of me, I should say. So it's going to be 40 days of affirmations, reflections to transform you into the renewed version of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a self-help book, it sounds like.
I guess you could say so, or a journal, just something to like kind of like a workbook, because there's going to be some prompts where each affirmation or each day you can delve into that specific subject matter and kind of reflect on where you want to be, where you are now, kind of just giving yourself what I call space and grace. And it's in dedication to my grandmother, Minnie Taylor, who actually passed, my father's mother that I mentioned before. So we're still.
Like she was the biggest influence on you in your life. Am I right?
She was amazing. She was everything. You hear me? Everybody loved her. From here to California, she was everybody's grandma. It was like we had to share her. And I found that out when we were having her memorial and her funeral, that she was beloved by so many. And that's a woman, 91 years, that definitely fulfilled her assignment. She was ready. And I believe she was holding on for us. But
so what was your grandmother's assignment?
My grandmother's assignment, she loved kids. And she always wanted to be a nurse, but she grew up in the Great Depression. She grew up in a farm in North Carolina. I don't even know if she even finished high school, or, she definitely didn't go to college, right? So she didn't have the resources and a lot of the luxuries that we enjoy, in our lifetime. So with that being said, she never became a nurse, but her entire life, she nursed people. She took care of people. She took care of family members. She was an only child. She took care of the household. And most importantly, later in her days, she took care of children. She worked nearly 30 years at the Presbyterian Church in Summit, New Jersey, where we grew up, at the nursery, where they take babies all the way up to, like, I forgot what grade they go up to. But all those kids, they when they threw a party for her when she finally retired, all those kids came back. They were in college. They were like, "Oh, Miss Minnie, do you remember me?" And a lot of them we had speak at the funeral in her honor, because that was her life's purpose. And I think I got my love of children from her. So I work with children.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
It sounds like she had a huge heart. And children always know. My dad used to say a child always knows when they're loved because they feel it instantly.
Yes.
And it sounds like your grandmother, Macy, had that gift. And
Minnie.
Minnie,
Yeah.
excuse me, Minnie. What
Yeah.
was her full name?
Minnie Mae Taylor.
Minnie Mae Taylor. So we're gonna have to put a picture up of Minnie. So Minnie
Yeah.
clearly had a lot of laws of life, and
Yeah.
clearly she is your biggest influence that gives you the
Absolutely.
light that shines inside of you, and that's how you're taking that power and you are sharing it with so many entrepreneurs, and in doing so, that sharing lights you up, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I think that's what we should do. I mean, a lot of times you find that people, they find more joy in giving. There's so much love in that, and there's so much reward in that. So whatever I can give, like I said, if it just means I'm telling my story and letting people know they're not alone, here are my experiences. It may not work for you, but this is what I did to get from point A to point B. Then I believe that is then I'm doing my job. I'm doing the right thing. And I think that we all could learn from that.
Well, that's amazing. And it's all about having people around you to support you. I want to take a quick commercial break to thank our diamond sponsor, attorney Tim Marecki. He's our personal injury attorney, putting community first. He's an attorney in Florida. He's been our sponsor now for 3 years of the platform. So let's take a look at his quick message, and then we'll be right back for more Laws of Life from Vernae. So we're back with entrepreneur, artist, author, women's empowerment. So let's get into the women's empowerment conversation.
Yes.
And so you consider yourself part of the bigger picture of women's empowerment. You're involved in a lot of women leader events. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned earlier, my two, I would say, most fond and most proud moments and publications have been Breakthrough and Letters to My Father. But I've been in over nearly 10 publications, and all centered around women. In these past 2-3 years, remember, I made that prayer and that declaration that I wanted to be intentional about attracting people in my life that were going to bring value and not just take up space, right? People I can pour into and they can pour into me. And I got just that. I have joined and collaborated with so many beautiful, amazing, powerful women that I can call at any given time, ask them questions. We've had collaboration books. We've done The Evolution Effect, where we're talking about overcoming adversity, breaking patterns. We have a book that's coming out. Actually, it's going to be launching at the end of this month. I don't know why everything that I do, it always coincides at the same time, but it's launching. It's basically 7 steps from going from victim to warrior. So we're speaking about that. We talk about trauma, overcoming trauma. I didn't realize until my later years that I had experienced trauma. I always thought that trauma were like very specific, intricate things that were like so catastrophic. And I'm like, oh gosh, well, I had a home and I had this and I had that. So I've never experienced trauma. It wasn't until later on, as I really delved into myself, that I learned that. So that's important. Collaboration is important. Here in Columbus, Ohio, as I just moved here about 6 months ago, I've joined with powerful women, the Women of Evolve, Women of Color, Elevate, all of these different connect groups where we will help one another, and we'll actually lend resources, we'll connect people to other resources to help them really find their divine purpose. I also was a founder of a mastermind what we called Building Your Own Empire. And we were doing Boss Lady Tip Tuesdays on Clubhouse for some time. I was the confidence coach. We had a mindset coach and a public speaking coach, where we really delve in and help people find their inner voice, right? Their inner voice, their inner passion and purpose, so that that can then come out to the world and they can express it in their own, special form, because not everybody's a writer or an author or a performer. So I feel like you got to find who you are and what is your gift, because we all have one. And that's what you need to share with the world.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, definitely, if any of those meetings are on Zoom, let us know. If we're always happy to post them on the Laws of Life website, lawsoflife.shop. And if you click on the event calendar, because you're part of the Laws of Life family now.
Yes.
So if you're going to any events or any amazing leadership events, please share them with me and I'll put them on our website, and then we
Awesome.
can share them with everybody in the community, everybody that comes to the summit. So what's different about a women empowerment event than a co-ed empowerment event, in your opinion?
Ooh, it's funny because, it's weird. I haven't had a lot of co-ed events as of lately, especially in these past 3 years. I've been speaking on panels, I've been doing roundtable discussions, a lot of virtual conferences. And, what I love about us as women, we're so powerful, right? We're the most powerful creatures on the planet. What I love is that we can be vulnerable and actually tell our stories. Like, we feel comfortable letting it out, sharing, asking each other questions, right? That takes a lot of strength to kind of just bare your soul and kind of stand before people somewhat kind of naked. And so that's kind of what I've gravitated towards. But I would like to see more co-ed events because I think we need to get the discussion going between men and women so we can better relate, right? They say, what is it? Women from Venus, men from Mars. The reason why we have that is because we don't always talk, right? We don't always, have these exchanges to build an understanding and growth and developing our perspectives. So I think it would be healthy that we kind of commingle a little bit more.
Well, let me tell you, I want to thank Johnny Regan for tuning in. Johnny is the founder of the Global Vision Conference. Have you met Johnny yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so you
Johnny.
you gotta follow Johnny, Renee, and everybody out there watching. Follow Johnny. He's the founder of the Global Vision Conference. We're having a big conference at the convention center on March 26th. The Laws of Life is a sponsor, but what he does is he gathers authors like you, artists, visionaries, philosophers, and basically it's a 4-hour event, and there's speeches, there's presentations, there's networking, and it's a really phenomenal co-ed event. I think you should definitely look into that.
Okay.
And that's also going to be on the Laws of Life calendar. So take a look for that. And thank you, Johnny.
Thank you for watching.
So there you go. And it's always a pleasure. So you just started a new podcast called Breakthrough. Tell us about the podcast.
Yes. It's called Our Breakthrough Podcast. I'm very, very strategic and intentional about calling it Our Breakthrough, right? Because I felt like what we went through and what we're still going through and enduring is something that will go down in history. It really has shown who we are as human beings, who we are in strength and numbers, right? Because I always say we're better together than we are alone. So it's funny that you mentioned when we first got on, when you talked about the breakdowns that I experienced to go to Breakthrough. That's what I say. One of my taglines for the actual show is giving people the breakthrough map through other people's stories, real stories and real experiences, giving them the breakthrough map to go from breakdown to breakthrough, from their pain to purpose, and from their past to living their greatest story. So that is really the premise of the show. I am interviewing other people that have gone through some really tremendous challenges and setbacks and hardships, but yet they came out on top. We're seeing the breakthrough. But what I want them to do is I want them to go back to the beginning to tell the viewers and the listeners how they started, where it happened for them, where was the turnaround, how did they get to the point where, okay, they're moving forward. And I think that's all it is. That's what it means to break through. You constantly are taking one step and putting it in front of the other, and you keep going and you just don't quit. That's all it means, is you keep breaking through. Oh yeah. So every Thursday, 11 a.m. So it's actually airing right now.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Is. I know. I said I do everything at the same time.
You did say that you love to do everything at the same time. That's incredible. And what type of guests are you still looking for guests to be on your podcast right now today?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to be putting out a lot of promotional flyers really just kind of recruiting, asking people who's next, because I do want people that have had, like I said, significant and sometimes really extraordinary stories where you would never know looking at them that they had been where they had been or that they even survived it, right? So men or women alike. I will say that, of course, you know that women are my sweet spot. But if you haven't seen it, our last episode, not today's episode, but the episode last week was with a young man who is a therapist. He's a life coach, but he has experienced some really, really devastating trauma. And he took that pain and transformed it into his passion and purpose. So I really loved his story. So I am looking for men as well. And because I feel like you guys are special too, and you have some really transformative stories that other men need to hear. So you can contact me at info@VernaeTaylor.com. And I have an interest form I will send to you where you can outline any details of what you may want to discuss in the show, what you're doing in your business, of course. You'll also get a description of what the show is about. And then we'll set up a time to kind of touch base before we actually do the interview. And then we air every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time and 4 p.m. UK. And we're also on Midwave Radio.
Yes, we love Fraser Ramsey. He's amazing. Shout out to Fraser and shout out to anybody. That's what I'm telling you, that these shows are an opportunity for you to also be a guest and to promote your own vision, your own brand, your own philosophy.
Absolutely.
So info@VernaeTaylor.com. They can go there and look into applying on how to be a guest on Vernae's new podcast, Breakthrough.
Yes.
So, wow, podcast, books. And what is your art? You're a singer, right?
I am. That was always my first love. I still have the newspaper clipping, my first talent show with my brother. I was 5 years old in kindergarten. Yes, we're about 6 years apart. And so he used to dress me. We used to choreograph our dance routines. And we performed together all up until the point, obviously he went on to live his life and I had to live mine. In high school, it was more about cheerleading. But all throughout college at Rutgers, I sang all the way through there. And then right after graduating from Rutgers, I went into musical theater. So I was doing that professionally. And it wasn't until probably 2018, 2019 that I broke into film. And then at that point, I got ready to pivot because a lot of the contracts I had, I was going to go back to. We featured the first gospel play in the Atlantic City casinos. I was supposed to go back there. I was doing a show in Brooklyn, a show in Hamilton, New Jersey. But all those things obviously were null and void at the time. So I had to do a quick pivot. And I found myself here right where I feel like I needed to be anyway as a storyteller. So
that's phenomenal. And as far as the future, what else do you see yourself? Are you gonna focus purely on the writing, the podcasting, or is there anything else that you're seeing you manifesting in the future? What
yes,
well, there's forward to?
Absolutely. I'm always goal setting, right? I always have these audacious goals. So yes, so I am Breaking Through Journal, our Breakthrough podcast. We are going to be launching with a whole nother network as well. So I'm expanding the distribution for that, right? With our Breakthrough podcast. I'm looking to create a breakthrough movement. I'm looking to do a breakthrough conference spring 2022.
Whoa.
And really and get back to actually speaking on a global level. I haven't really fully integrated into the real world yet. So I'm not traveling like I used to, but I hope to really get out there. And I'm doing a lot of mentorship for a lot of younger girls. So I'm looking to kind of expand in that space as well. So I am Breaking Through Journal, the relaunch of Breakthrough the Book, our Breakthrough podcast, and Breakthrough Conference you'll see in spring 2022.
Wow, that sounds so exciting. Well, Renee, we wish you all the best of luck in
Thank
all
you.
of your endeavors with your congratulations on all your accomplishments up to this point, on being such an incredible entrepreneur. And keep coming to the summit on Tuesday at 11 a.m. because there's a lot of extraordinary entrepreneurs there for you to meet. And I want everybody out there watching to come to the summit and meet Vernae. Vernae, I can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Thank you.
It was just truly a pleasure to have you. You are a ray of light. You are an inspiration. So
thank you so
definitely
much.
cannot wait to hear about your conference. Everybody, be sure to follow Vernae. Now,
Yes.
Vernae, what is the best way of following your platform? Talk to us.
Absolutely. So I'm Renee Taylor across all social media platforms. You'll see my link tree is easy, linktree/Renee Taylor. Everything is in there. Whether you're looking for my books, you want to read my bio, you want to know how you can, subscribe or even sponsor or support. Even sometimes I might put, some past projects that I've done where I've been awarded, whether it be in music and film. So you can find that there. You can also find our Breakthrough podcast is all across social media platforms as well. And you can find that show or listen to that show, Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. And you can go to VernaeTaylor.com just to learn more about me and everything that I've done over the span of my 20, 30-year career.
That's extraordinary. So everybody be sure to follow Renee, connect with her and tell her that Blanca sent you over to Vernae so she knows you saw this show. And Renee, enjoy your 2022. Can't wait to see what you accomplish next.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll be here next Thursday at 11 a.m.
Bye, guys.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet. That you showed